I will show you an extreme strategy that can solve very difficult Sudokus so you do not have to give up on puzzles like this. And with that, it's solving time. Normally, with puzzles, you start by looking for digit restrictions from 1 to 9. And so if you look at the ones, there's no places you can make a solve or do any marks. But with the twos, you can see with this 2 cutting across row 3, you want to mark anytime a candidate only appears twice in a 3x3 block, so you can mark that in block 1. And then with these twos, mark that in block 2. That helps you find where restrictions are in the puzzle and will lead you to your first solves. Greetings, friend. Robert Butler sent this puzzle to me and requested I solve it because it had him hard stuck. Thank you, Robert, for sending this to me. I will show you now, step by step, how to solve this puzzle, and including an extreme strategy that you can use to solve the toughest puzzles. And before I show you where to look next, I do want to hear from you. Have you ever asked someone else to help you solve a Sudoku? And what was the result? Please, 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 please share that with the other viewers and help me grow the internet's best Sudoku community. I have asked other solvers in the CTT Discord for some help on some puzzles that were giving me problems, and it's super valuable. It helps me learn these new strategies. When have you done that, and how has it helped you? Now, after the twos, you look with the threes, and they're all filled out, so you can't make any marks with the threes. Go to the fours, and you'll notice that you have 2 places for a 4 here in block 2 and in block 3 and in block 9 right here. Move on to the 5s, and with the 5s you get something interesting here. You might notice that with this 5 cutting across row 9 and this 5 coming down column 7, 2 places for a 5 here in block 9. They're in the same row. It makes them a pointing pair. You can't put 5s here. Blocks them out. And so the 5s are restricted to one of these 3 cells now in block 8. I don't mark when there's 3 possibilities because I'm looking for these one-step restrictions and for pairs mainly by doing the marks. Also with the 5s, with this 5 and this 5, 2 places for a 5 right there. No solves though. Move on to the 6s. And you might see that with the 6 coming down, you actually can mark 2 places for a 6 in block 7. And move on to the 7s. 2 places for 7 here in block 3. And then 2 places for 7 here in block 9. And in block 5 with this 7 coming down, a pointing pair of 7s in block 5 to go along with this 7. 2 places for 7 in block 8. Look with the 8s, and there's no places where you can mark 2 cell restrictions or solves with the 8. And then the 9s, you can see we got plenty of 9s available. 2 places for a 9 in block 8 and 2 places in block 2. And that is about it. But that's all you're going to be able to solve. No solved cells. Very difficult break-in. You do not get any solved cells using normal marking and the 7 most popular strategies. And so you have to make a choice here. This puzzle requires more advanced strategies, and you can look either at single candidate strategies or at Bivalue cells. If we were to mark the Bivalue cells, I can show you where those would be. You look right here, you have a heavy house in row 9, at least 5 cells filled out. So you got a 3, 4, 5, 8, 9. You just need a 1, 2, 6, 7. With this 6, 7 here, that puts a 1, 2 BVC right there. The rest of these require more marks. Okay, other Bivalue cell, you can look right here. In this heavy house, you have a 3, 4, 5, 7, 9. Need a 1, 2, 6, 8. So that's where I'd start. I'd look at these heavy houses and then look for intersections. And you get a 6, 8 here, and then because it's 4, 6, you get a 1, 8 right here. So that's another Bivalue cell. Go across row 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 9. You need a 5, 6, 7, 8. Well, 8 and 7 right there. So that's a 5, 6 BVC. across row 3, 2, 3, 5, 7, 9. You just need a 1, 4, 6, 8. You might notice with the 1, 4 here, that's a 6, 8 BVC. And then here in column 7, you got another heavy house, 2, 3, 5, 8, 9. So you need a 1, 4, 6, and 7. And you'll see right here, because of the 4, 6, this is a 1, 7. And so those are all the Bivalue cells right there. None of them really match up very well. I mean, you can look at these, but they don't result in any advanced strategies. So then the other option you have is you can look for single candidate strategies and focus on the single candidates. And to abbreviate this, I would go through and you click on the 1s, 2s, 3s, all the way through the 9s, see where you can find some conjugate pairs. That's the backbone of these single candidate strategies. To speed it up a bit, I'll tell you we need to go up to the 6s. I know, there's only 1 6. However, that 6 is in an important place in this puzzle. So where can the 6s be? What are the possibilities? I will color that. 6 there, conjugate pair, 6 there, and 6s here. So you might notice you have 2 places for 6 in column 3, right? And you have 3 places for 6 here in column 5. And in fact, you know, these cells right here would be a nice X-wing where a 6 could be there and there, there and there. If it wasn't for this extra cell, this fin, that's in the same column, column 5. So what you found here, you have to look at this fin. If this is true, if this was a 6, then this cell right here, which is in line, in the same block, in a line with the X-wing, that would not be a 6, right? If this was a 6. If this was not a 6, what you end up with is an X-wing in these columns, and you'd still be able to eliminate a 6 right there. So either way, this cell can never be a 6. And very quickly, if you put a 6 right here, you can see that you'd block out 6s for all these cells, and then in columns 3 and 5, the only place to put a 6 would be in the same row. You break the puzzle. We don't want that. So what you found here, this is a finned X-wing. So you can remove a 6 from this cell right here. Doesn't seem like much, but it's going to help out a little bit later in solve, and I'll show you why. So what could be in that cell could have been a 2, 6, 8, or 9, but now you can remove that 6. And you notice that you go 1, 3, 4, pointing pair of 5s, can't be a 6 anymore, can't be 7s, you know, because that's 7, and it could be an 8 or a 9. So finned X-wing, that is a single candidate strategy that you would find. There's no other single candidate strategies you can do. So no Bivalue cell strategies, no single candidate strategies other than this one minor finned X-wing. So where do you go next? Well, now you got to look for extreme strategies. I would say look for setter's intent, but this was just given to Robert. He just found it in the book, so we don't know if it was computer generated or made handmade. So we have no idea what setter's intent is. Instead, now you got to look for a little bit more extreme strategies. I have a whole extreme Sudoku tutorial to deal with strategies like this. This is where you're doing a little bit more advanced chains. The good news, though, is it's not much different than your single candidate strategies looking for conjugate pairs and your Bivalue strategies. You just have to link them together, and you can start making some solves using this extreme strategy I'm about to show you. So what you want to do is you want to set up with filling out this cell right here. This is going to be a 1, 5, 9. And what I want to focus on is the fact that you have some conjugate pairs. You know, these 9s are together, these 7s are together, these 7s are together. This is where we're going to start looking to find this extreme strategy. You want to fill out this cell right here. This could be a 2, 5, 8, or 9. Row 8, column 6. So this cell right here could be a 5, 6, 7, 8. And then what you might notice is where can a 5 be in column 6? Because of this 5 can't be here, can't be there because of this 5, and it can't be here because of the pointing pair of 5s. right? It can't be here because of this 5. So the 5s are restricted to 2 cells in column 6. So they're a conjugate pair. Either 5's here. If it's not there, it has to be here. This is going to help us connect some of these other possibilities. So what we have to do is you understand that this is a conjugate pair. 5's either here or here. In a bivalue cell, this cell is either a 1 or a 7. That's a conjugate pair within the cell, right? So either this cell's a 1. If it's not a 1, it has to be a 7. So you can look at those possibilities to set up our extreme strategy. You want to start in this cell right here. And you say, hey, if this is a 1, if that cell's a 1, any cell that sees it cannot be a 1, including this cell right there. That's important. If this is not a 1, it has to be a 7. And what that does is it eliminates a 7 from right there. If you look across row 8, where can a 7 be? Well, it can't be here, here because of the pointing pair of 7s, or here because of this 7. The only other place you have a 7 in row 8 is right here. So that's another conjugate pair. It forces 7 right there, which would eliminate that 5 and put the 5 right here. And then what you see is you eliminate and displace a 9, you put a 9 right there. You're like, okay, what's the big deal, Timberlake? The big deal is no matter what value this is, if this is a 1, that can't be a 1. If this is a 7, you saw that cell is a 9. It's still not a 1. We don't know what this cell is, but we know no matter the value, this cannot be a 1. This is called an alternate inference chain type 2. And what you can do with this, by knowing this knowledge, is that you can remove the start candidate, a 1, from the end cell, and you actually can remove the end candidate, a 9, from this start cell. But there's already no possibility for a 9 there. So what you can do is you can move a 1 from this cell right here. This is awesome stuff. And the way to find this is to connect those bivalue cells with the single candidate conjugate pairs. This is what I just showed you. Now, by removing a 1 from right there and having a 1 right here, what does that do to your 1s in column 5? Because you always want to look at impact, row, column, and block. Well, it restricts the 1s of these 2 cells. So it's a claiming pair of 1s now in column 5. We're doing a lot of work down here in block 8. You're going to notice this. So we do that, and then the 1s could be in one of these 3 cells now in block 2. Not going to mark that yet. And then you might notice, 1s can't be in either of these 2 cells anymore. And so now we're going to look for another type of these chains. Where can the 8s go in column 2? It could be here. Can't be here because of this 8, and it could be there. But it can't be here because of that 8 or 8. So we have a conjugate pair of 8s here in column 2. Now let's do a little bit of filling in. So what could be in this cell right here, row 7, column 2? It could be a 1, 2, or an 8. Row 4, column 2, this other blue cell could be a 1, 5, or an 8. And then if you look across here in this cell, which has some restrictions going on, row 7, column 5, what could that be? A 1, 6, or a 9? Okay, let's start right here and go, hey, this cell can either be an 8, right? And any cell that sees it can't be an 8, which would be this cell right here. That sees it, right? If it's not an 8, then this cell right here has to be an 8. And what you're going to notice is if this is an 8, that forces a 6 right here because it's a bivalue cell, forces a 5 right there, forces a 9 right here, displaces a 9 here, and it puts a 9 in this cell. So either this cell is an 8, and this can't be an 8. If it's not an 8, you just saw through this alternate inference chain type 2, this cell ends up being a 9. Either way, this cell cannot contain an 8. And so what you can do is remove an 8 from that cell. We'll go back here and remove an 8 from right there. Like, what's the big deal there? You just remove one candidate. But this is huge. If you can figure out these alternate inference chain type 2s, you're going to get so much more solving. And like I said, since you end in a 9, you could remove a 9 from there, but a 9 is already not possible. You want to work both ways. What does that do? you got to see, what does that do by removing that 8 from right there? Well, now 8s can't be in any of these cells in block 8. And because of this 8, they can't be here. You have now a pointing pair of 8s. So this cell can't be an 8. This has to be your 8s in block 7. And you're like, okay, now what's the big deal? Well, this 8's also pointing at this cell right here. What can this cell be? You have a 3, 4, 5, 7, 9 in the block. You need a 1, 2, 6, or an 8. Well, now you know that it can't be, it can be a 1, but it can't be a 2 because the 2 is already in the row, and it can't be an 8, so it can be a 6. It can only be a 1 or 6, right? Because you got the 2 and pointing pair of 8s here. That's a 1, 6. Now look across this row. You remember, you got a 3, 4, 5, 8, 9. You need a 1, 2, 6, 7. Well, you remove the 1s from this cell. And the 7s as well because of the pointing pair of 7s. This is can only be a 1, 6. And this is huge because now what does that do? You'll notice you have a 1, 2 right there. And I'll keep that orange. And you have a, excuse me, not a 1, 6. You got a 2, 6 right there, right? You remove the 1s. That's a 2, 6. So you have a 1, 2 here, 1, 6 there, 2, 6 there. All three paired possibilities of the candidates 1, 2, and 6. If this is a 1, that's a 6. If this is a 2, that's a 6. No matter what this orange cell is, one of these has to be a 6. So you can remove a 6 from any cell that sees both these. So it shares a row with this cell or it shares a block with this cell. And so you can remove a 6 from all three of these cells. This is a Sudoku XY wing. And it's a, Bivalue cell strategy. Awesome. So we're kind of working our way back down. We did the alternate inference chain type 2. We made some few key eliminations. Now you're going to come back to Bivalue and single candidate strategies that you might be more familiar with. By removing the 6s from here, what does this do to our puzzle in our candidate 6? You remember we had a finned X wing that included this cell right here. By doing this XY wing, that's no longer a 6, right? So what does that mean? What it means is you now have an X wing of 6s in columns 3 and 5. Remember? Because the 6s can only be here now. They can't be there because of the XY wing, and they can only be here in column 3. And so now you can remove 6s from all other cells in rows 5 and 7 because the 6 has to be here and here or here and here. And so what does that do for our puzzle? Well, let's look. Because you did the X-wing, the 6 now can only be in one of these cells right here in block 9. It can't be in one of these 3 cells. This is a 6, 7 hidden pair, which leaves a 1, 4, 5 naked triple in block 9. This is huge. This can't be a 5. This can't be a 4. But since these have to be 1, 4, 5, they're a lock triple for the block and the row. Now let's look and see what kind of eliminations you can make. What's the impact on row, column, and block? Well, if a 1 has to be in one of these cells, it can't be here anymore. Which means what? You can solve this cell now for a 1. Only place left in column 5 for a 1. If that's a 1, that's going to be a 6. And you can remove a 6 from right there. What else can you solve? 1, 4, 5, you can remove the 1 from right there. So a 1 has to be here. A 1's got to be there. This has to be a 1. And so now you got a 2, 6, 7 right there. So this makes this a 2, 8 naked pair here in block 7. Since that's a 2, 8 naked pair, this can't be a 2 anymore. That's got to be your 9, which means this has to be a 6. And now you see this is a 2. This can't be a 2 or 6, so that's got to be your 7. That's going to be your 6. That's going to be your 7. And now you end up with a 5-8 naked pair in block 8. Huge. And follow these marks, right? Try to clean up the best you can. That's got to be your 5. That's got to be your 9. This can't be a 9 anymore. And you want to keep following and see what can you do here. You have a 6 and 7 here in block 5, and you want to see where you can go from there. Where can a 6 go in block 4? Well, with these two 6s, this has to be your 6. So that makes that a 7 and a 6 right there. Okay, and then you can move on to block 3 with this 7. Well, that's got to be a 1. That's going to displace that 7, so you can solve it for 7. This has to be your 4. And it's going to displace that 4. You can solve this cell now for a 4. And what that leaves you with is, looks like an 8 and a 6. With this 8, here's your 6, here's your 8. Looking good. Okay, we can remove the 4 from right there. Now what can you do? Just keep looking at the impact, row, column, and block. We can remove this color because we know now that's just a naked pair 1-5. With this 6, now that's got to be an 8 right there. And now you can disambiguate the 5-8 right there. Looking good. Okay, with this 4, you can displace that 4. Always go for the marks. I love gobbling up all these marks. And now you can fill out all these BVCs. Tack those one cell restrictions, you know, the BVCs and these marks, and you'll get quicker solves. Okay, move that. Can't be a 1. What do you have up here? This has got to be a 2 or an 8. Well, with this 8, here's your 8 displacing that 2, which displaces this 2. Solve this for 2, displacing that 5, and now you got your 8 and 2 right here in block 7. Leaves you with a 1 and an 8 here. Well, with this 8, here's your 8, here's your 1, okay? And then you can look across row 4, and you see you just need a 1 and a 7. With the 7, here's your 7, here's your 1. Disambiguate the 5-1 right there, looking good. And with this 5-8, that's got to be your 2, full house, 8 of 9 cells filled out. That's got to be a 5. We'll finish up block 2 here. You just need a 1 and a 6. Try to knock them both out at the same time. There's your 6, there's your 1. You come in here, you got 3 cells remaining. You know you can solve this, right? Look across row 5, and I just don't see an 8. So what's left is a 5 and a 6. Pull the 5 up from there. There's your 5, and our last digit is a 6. Now see if you can apply this extreme strategy to this next puzzle. Thank you so much for watching.